Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Programs like this that promote civic engagement are an important part of the type of programming we offer here at Lippitt House Museum. Tonight, we are happy to continue our 7-year partnership with the Providence League of Women Voters by building on a relationship Lippitt House Museum started last year with the Reentry Campus Program. I also want to recognize the financial support from a grant received from the Rhode Island League of Women Voters Education Fund for this program tonight entitled Barriers to Democratic Participation for Formerly Incarcerated Individuals. For this evening's community conversation, we will leave time at the end of the program for audience questions. We encourage you to use the Q&A option on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. Please don't use the chat function this evening for your questions. I'm going to put a link in the chat feature that will contain some information with some biographical information about our panelists, so we can devote more time to hear more directly from the participants in this evening's session. This conversation will be recorded and posted on the Preserve Rhode Island YouTube channel on Friday. So now I'm going to turn over to Liz Head, this evening facilitator with the Providence League of Women Voters, for more information about this evening's program. Liz?
I'd like to welcome everybody to this evening's program. The League of Women Voters has been interested in criminal justice reform for many years, and tonight we are so pleased to be part of this program. We have, this is somewhat tangential continuation of last September's program conversation with the Lippitt House Museum on criminal justice reform. But tonight we will be focusing on the challenges facing formerly incarcerated people as they re-enter participation in the community and civic life. All right, with that, I will start by introducing the panelists. We have with us 3 students from the Campus Reentry Campus Program. Meko Lincoln, Stanley Alston, and Shannon Sampson. We also have with us Justice Melissa Long, who was recently appointed to the Rhode Island State Supreme Court. She has been a Superior Court Justice since 2017. And additionally, we have Representative Scott Slater, who represents District 10 in the city of Providence. And he has been instrumental in working on some legislation that will improve opportunities for employment for previously incarcerated people. And with that, I am going to ask everyone on the panel, one by one,
Liz, did you want to ask James to kick off our program this evening?
Yes, I certainly do. Thank you, Carrie. James, who is the executive director of the Campus Reentry Program, has written a short poem which he explained to us earlier, and we would love to hear that because it's very pertinent.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Liz. Wonderful to be invited back to the Women League of Voters presentation on criminal justice reform and to be advocating in this way. Thank you for having all of us. I'm going to set the poem up really quick. Not going to be long-winded with the story I gave you, but I do want to give context to this poem. A while ago, I was in Monteiro, and my mother had sent me a picture of a baby who at the time I thought was my son. And I thought to myself, sat there thinking to myself, I did not want the circumstances that I had been placed under to happen to my son. I did not want my son to be victim of any of the things that I had been victim of: police brutality, to engage in criminal behavior, to think less of himself. I just did not want this for my son, because obviously I loved my son. I was scared because I was away, and I just wanted the best for him. Come to find out, that picture wasn't my son. And if you saw my baby picture and my son's baby picture, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart. I loved my son. I just couldn't understand why, if I didn't allow it to happen to him, or wouldn't want it for him, why would I want it to happen to myself? So this is a poem called The Greatest Gift. It goes, true love comes with a range of tears. Emotional roller coasters perceived as passion, joy, pain, and fears. Something earned and yet something missed through the trials of your tribulation. You can always find the greatest gift. Today is a rough one. Tomorrow, it may even call for snow. If we're people who are not willing to weather storms, we are people who are not willing to grow. True love comes with a range of emotions, more intensified than in the past. It's passion, joy, pain, and fears. Tomorrow, there'll be a beautiful laugh. True love is a gift, and it's the greatest gift that I could have learned how to give to myself. And that's when I began to understand why I didn't want that for my son, yet why would I want it for myself? And this is something that I had to learn how to do. I had to learn how to give myself self-love. And once I learned how to do that, I was able to do that for others. So thank you for letting me share. I look forward to the rest of this program.
Thank you very much, James. Really appreciate it. I'm trying there. Okay, if everybody would like to put their video back on, that would be great, and unmute themselves. Part of the panel, we'll start with the introductions. And I think the first one, I'd like you, when you introduce yourself, if at all possible, to explain why the students, to explain why you're part of the Reentry Campus Program, and just a little bit about yourself, maybe if you're working, where you're working, this kind of thing. All right, and I'd like to start with Stanley Alston, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Stanley Alston. I'm from Providence, Rhode Island. I lived there all my life. What got me in the situation that I'm in, or I've gotten in, I was impacted by several things. The most insidious part was recidivism, addiction, and poverty. And I decided to go back to school at a late age. I think I was 46 to go when I started going back to school, college. And I took the initiative to change my life, my lifestyle. And now I have a case management certification. I'm also working as a case manager at the Reentry Campus, and I have 2 classes left to complete my associates. So I think that I'm progressing. I'm saying considering where I came from, and we all know that I made some bad choices. I've been incarcerated. However, as I'm taking the tools that are available to me, which is education and other things, family, and keeping myself away from the other people that would exacerbate my problems, I find that I'm on a good path right now. That's about it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Meko, would you care to explain not explain yourself, introduce yourself?
Certainly. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Meko Lincoln. Like Stanley, I'm also a lifelong resident of Rhode Island. Really briefly, of course, recidivism and substance use disorder was certainly part of my problem and certainly part of my story. What got me to the Reentry Campus Program and primarily is just the lack of access to, quality secondary education in adult correctional institution. So the Reentry Campus Program it gave me the ability to further my education. I mean, there's some programs there at the adult correctional institution. However, they really lack in it. And then when we are released, the cost of going to college is extremely high. I'm a person of initially I was a person of low income. So having the ability for the Reentry Campus Program to assist me with the finances and, hooking me up with a quality education at Rogers University was something I really, wanted to plug into. So that is what got me into the Reentry Campus Program. I'm also a case manager at Stanley as well. I work at the Amos House located in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm a reentry case manager. I'm also a certified peer recovery specialist. I also assisted Mr. Slater, Scott Slater, Representative Slater, with the Fair Chance Licensing Bill. It was really part of legislation for the state of Rhode Island. It assist me and be able to establish myself as a person of I want to, dignity and value. That's what that bill has presented for me. Prior to that, had I been able to get a certification, I was unable to get a certification, but because of this bill passing, I was able to, partake in that and go down that path. In May, I have my associate's degree. I'm continue to, continue my education. But thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Shannon?
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Shannon Sampson, and I became involved through the Reentry Program through James. I met him in 2019 while I was incarcerated, and I was looking, to further my education and just find out about resources that were available to me. And I stayed in contact with him when I was released last year. So I've been home for a year. Right now, I actually just graduated Building Futures, which is something that I am very proud of myself for. The transition of coming home, I've been home a year, but it's still kind of fresh for me. But having the support of, James and other people from the program reach out to me on the regular to make sure that I'm doing okay, and if I need anything, just having that that found part of my foundation of re-entering back into society and becoming a productive member, of my community, and doing more than what I was doing before I got arrested and everything. So I am a little nervous. So I appreciate being able to be a part of this and just kind of listen in and give my input with these issues and everything, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about people who have been incarcerated and where we're going to end up, and because of where we've been, this is automatically what it where we're going to end up, and I think we deserve a second chance, and sometimes a third or a fourth, because we're human, and the environments and the support that we have all make a difference, so yeah.
Well, Shannon, thank you very much. Are you working now?
I'm actually So I'm looking to get into the union, the Ironworkers Union, which doesn't start taking applications until the last 2 weeks of April. But right now I am taking a welding course, which ends Friday at Building Futures. So right now I'm learning about welding, and then we're working on small homes in Providence off of Manton Ave. So I'll be able to continue to work and learn building those houses, the small homes out there. So it's really, really exciting for me.
That's great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Could we hear now from Representative Slater? Introduce yourself, because all I saw was that you represent District 10 in Providence.
Good evening, and thank you, Liz, for the nice opening and introduction. I appreciate you having me here tonight and talking about this important topic. So I'm Scott Slater. I'm the state representative in District 10, which is Providence. It consists of Elmwood section, we call it sometimes South Elmwood, Reservoir Triangle in the west end of Providence, Cranston Street area. And so I've been a representative for about 11 years. When I first started as a representative and first started canvassing the neighborhood and knocking on doors, I knocked on many doors, and many of the folks that I talked to and or speaking to had said that, similar to what the stories that we heard earlier, and folks like Stanley, who said he made some bad choices over the course of his life. Haven't we all, right? So when I was talking to them, they said, thank you for the right to vote, because around that time, just previous to that, we had passed, allowed folks with criminal records the ability to vote and to register and they said, thank you for that. But what I really would like would be the chance to support my family and to work. They said with the criminal record they had, it was like carrying around a scarlet letter, and that whenever they applied, even when they first applied for jobs, they couldn't even get past the application process and get to an interview and explain to folks their history and why they maybe went down that path and how they've changed their life. So I immediately began to work on legislation at the time, which was, that passed too, which was called Ban the Box, which would take the felony question off job applications. And the reason behind that was not to allow folks that had criminal records or force people to hire folks with criminal records, but so that the people doing the hiring could see that these individuals had worked to change their life and were actually better employees because they had more to prove, and they had a desire to re-enter into the community and to provide for their family. And when they got the chance to meet them and learn this and hear their stories and hear how they changed their life around, it was many people were happy to employ them and happy to have them as employees, because they found that they worked harder and better than many of the other people, and they had more to prove. So that was the first step. And then, working on expungement laws. And then as we did more in the General Assembly around justice reinvestment and trying to change around how we treated folks that committed crimes and allow more diversion programs, especially for folks with drug convictions and people with substance abuse issues. One of the pieces that came to light is that Rhode Island.
Later, can we save some of that?
Okay, sorry. I'm all geared up, ready to go. So
right, wound up and ready to go. Justice Long, we'd like to hear your story too, please.
Thank you so much. I am Melissa Long, and I currently serve as an Associate Justice on the Rhode Island Supreme Court. I like to say that judges are the reason that I'm here tonight. I was born a little more than 3 years after the United States Supreme Court decided that anti-miscegenation statutes are unconstitutional. And anti-miscegenation statutes, of course, are those that prohibited Blacks and whites from intermarrying. My parents, a Black man and a white woman, had married in December of 1966. And the Supreme Court's Loving versus Virginia decision decriminalized their union in my father's home state of Virginia and allowed them to live and raise a family without fear of arrest. My parents met in the military. My mom served in the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps, and my dad was a career soldier. So I grew up as an Army brat. Like, I think James had some connections to the Army as well. And my siblings and I had a somewhat nomadic childhood. We lived on and near Army bases in El Paso, Texas, in Schweinfurt, Germany, and in Seoul, South Korea, where we lived among families for whom love of country was understood, service to others was a way of life, and sacrifice was something that came with the job. I later learned that my parents embraced those sacrifices in part to shield us, their children, from the lingering effects of Jim Crow and the awful sting of racism. They made deliberate, strategic choices about duty assignments to keep us out of the Deep South in the years following the Loving decision. So those experiences and my parents' commitment to service are a North Star that have guided me throughout my professional life. Prior to becoming a judge, I consistently sought opportunities to work with diverse individuals and groups to build consensus and community, to solve problems, and to advance fair treatment of all. Becoming a judge has allowed me to pursue my life's mission in the most significant way. Courts play a critical role in our constitutional democracy, and so does education. And so I'm so pleased to have the opportunity to hear the stories of the students here tonight and to participate in efforts to improve our education about our civic institutions. And I look forward to hearing the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to, I think, ask the students first and then ask Representative Slater and Justice Long to ask any follow-up questions that they would like. And the question that I thought would be interesting to people are, did you feel prepared to re-enter society when you left prison? Were there sufficient employment programs and resources? And I think the answer is probably no.
But it is no. I think I spent a minute on that. No, there's not significant programs enough to prepare an individual to re-enter society. In addition to that, many of the barriers to re-entering are mandated within the actual re-entry process. What I mean by that is that, you have a number of different things that's going on, especially particularly you try to get into civic life once we're released. Individuals that's in adult correctional institution, we're not prepared to enter society and participate in society the way society believes a person re-entering should be able to be participate and be prepared for. There's not many programs, none regarding employment. Mostly what we are given is a riptych, some pamphlets of resources, and then told, to, fend for yourself, So if you don't have, community support, organizational support, individual support, it becomes really, really difficult trying to re-enter. So certainly not.
Okay. Do any of the students have anything to add to that? And I didn't introduce James, who's here, because I wasn't really expecting him at the beginning. But do Stanley or Shannon, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I think I've been in and out of prison. I'm not ashamed of it because I'm not going to deny my past. I became a recidivist, and every time I was on my way out, I had a plan, but I couldn't execute it because of certain barriers in place, as Meko mentioned. The discharge planning, it wasn't as effective. I did get food stamps, but I did want to work. but the jobs that are available to me is poverty-stricken jobs that are not paying. So I'm still suspended in poverty. That's why I went to school. And I say that a lot of people, there's a lot of people in prison that has skills and they can get out, get a job, do construction, or. And I also have a welding certification like Shannon. I'm saying there's a lot of people willing to do things, but the opportunities are not available because of the discrimination that's been going on with even on applications. They ask you if you're a formerly incarcerated person. Have you been incarcerated before? So I think the barriers for me was more of the opportunities because I'm willing to work, but people are discriminating or denying me employment. And that's one of the main keys for me personally, because how am I going to get a home? Now, homelessness is really disturbing when you can't even study. How am I going to study? I'm about
Shannon, did you have anything to add that I'm sure that housing is an issue, and us, well, I'll ask that later, but we'll have to keep our answers a little shorter because we're running out of time already. Shannon, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I do actually. I believe, like for me, I was prepared to leave, but it was like a whole mixture of things, like, because not only are you, well, I can only speak for me. Like with the discharge planning, a lot of the times, like, they don't see the people, like, they don't really do the planning with them. Like they just, like, especially somebody doing a shorter amount of time, they just kind of like, they don't take it serious as to really try to help these people, plan so that they don't come back, for me, like the discharge planning, like I pretty much did everything without them. Like, I made a plan. Like, luckily I have a good support network on the outside, so that made all the difference for me. But I know for a lot of people, they don't have the resources or the support, so pretty much you get thrown back out, into the same situation, the same, circumstances, and then the recidivism is gonna happen, because they're going back out into what brought them in, and so I was kind of like, it's sad because I was, in prison with a lot of people that have talent, that are skilled and that want the chance to be able to succeed, but they're not given the opportunity. Like like there's not enough programs of, getting people out to work, for when they go back out into, the regular society. There's so much stigma,
Right.
but yeah.
Yeah, I think I can understand a little. Justice Long or Representative Slater, do you have any specific questions for them, or?
Can I add something really quickly?
Yes, really quickly.
Really quickly, because I see both ends of the spectrum, because I'm formerly incarcerated, but I also have worked in partnership with the Department of Corrections, and I've worked in partnership with discharge planning. And discharge planners in the Department of Correction is strapped. You have maybe 4 or 5 discharge planners that are tasked with seeing an overwhelming majority of the people who are coming home to all over the state of Rhode Island, Providence, Woonsocket, all over the place. And there's really only so much they can do, because our plans are all complex. Nobody has a set plan. This person may need housing. This person needs employment. This person needs to get into school. And all of us need food stamps. We all need a riptych coming home. And you have discharge planners, maybe 4, who are responsible for all of this work with the amount of individuals who are coming home. And the problem is, right, we spend this much money on helping people return to society. We spend like 0.1% of our state budget, maybe less than that, is spent on helping these people return home. And on the flip side, we spend $70,000 a year to incarcerate people. To incarcerate one female in the Department of Correction, it costs $120,000 a year. So we will spend all of this money to incarcerate people, but we will spend this much, knowing that if we don't do something, they'll come back, because recidivism is 50%. But we'll spend this much money to help them to get out and stay out and never return. When actually, if we put a little bit of money up front, we could probably save a lot of money at the back end. So I just wanted to add that to this conversation.
Thank you very much, because that leads into another question. But I want to ask Justice Long and Representative Slater if they have any additional thoughts or questions.
I'm good right now. Thank you, though. I'm going to yield my time to Representative.
Was anyone, any of the students that are here were they able to benefit so far from the law that we did pass on the licensing?
Have not, but I'm embarking upon that journey right now. I'm looking to get my LCPD, so I began the process. I mean, it's a long process. It's going to take a couple of years in order for me to, but I have got my CPRS, Certified Peer Recovery Specialist. I had to go to Rhode Island Certification Board in order to obtain that certification. But I'm looking for, things that's going to assist me with better wages for me and my family. And it's going to take a little while now. I'm only like 3 years removed from the adult correctional institution. And it took me a year to, just get my foot in, so I have not yet, though.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear you're embarking on those endeavors. And, hopefully the law that's passed that, that you can obtain those certification, that gives you the motivation to continue with that education that you're receiving. And, also, a lot of times we get credit for passing the laws, but it's folks like you, Meko, came forward and shared your story, and everyone else that testified and let us know how important this law meant to them. So thank you, because it makes my job and as a representative so much easier. And you are so compelling to so much of the committee and other representatives. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Is definitely participating as an activist, and I think Stanley is too.
Yes.
Yes, yes, you saw that. Yeah, I think because as I'm going to school, I encountered this phrase, social entrepreneurship.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Social entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And what that consists of is you find a social problem within your community, and you create a business. That's the entrepreneurship part, and you create a business addressing that social problem. Now, the barriers that really got in my way, I want to create something for that, and my focus is housing. Eventually I want to have a halfway house for people that are getting out of prison and want to go to school. I understand that we have so many different organizations for addiction and substance abuse. What about people that are going to school? That to me, I think is really important, and it's like an incentive, and they're doing something more constructive. And we get so much support for being on drugs. Why don't we get support for being on some education?
Excellent point. You brought up several things. One was there seems to be sort of a pipeline from school to dropping out to prison. Do you all agree with that, or do you think that that's a little simplistic, which you probably?
I think Liz, if I can answer that really quickly, I think I mean, it's certainly there, you know. The pipeline to prison is definitely real. It's real. I mean, we talk about civic participation, you know, and you know, presumably there's supposed to be civics within the school system when we're elementary school learning that stuff. I went to Sackett Street Elementary School. I grew up on Lower South Providence. I grew up in Scott Slater's district, you know, and I know that when I was young in second, third grade, there wasn't, you know, that wasn't, you know, any type of, you know, training regarding, you know, being a civic participant, you know, and I'm 49 years old, and I grew up, you know, in the 70s and the 80s. That's what, you know, I was a child and teenager, so on and so forth. And, you know, the school wasn't there teaching me this information, you know, and I think had that been there, had that been, you know, prevalent in my, you know, teachings, I could have had more education regarding how to participate as a citizen. And also, you know, there's a number of different factors that prevented me from really participating, to be honest with you. But it's certainly there. And there's a number of different things that participate with that, you know, pipeline to prison thing.
Yeah. The other thing, I know we discussed it when we had a prior meeting last week a little bit. We discussed that hierarchy of needs where every person needs safety, they need shelter, and they need food. Now I hear you all, as part of the discharge planning, you all did get food stamps. So maybe that sort of takes care of the food issue. But also, did you all have support from families? Shannon's mentioned a support network that she felt fortunate in having a support network. How about Stanley and Meko? Did you have much of a support network when you got out of prison?
May I? Yeah. For me, as I mentioned before, I've been in and out of prisons. Which sentence? Some of the times when I had gotten out, I had some support, and that's another thing about going to prison. If you're in poverty, you'll get out encountering chronic poverty because of what you lose while you're there. You may lose your support system, especially becoming a recidivist. You lose more because people don't trust you, even though the ones that are closest to you, they have a tendency to not want to be an enabler or codependent or whatever that attaches them to you in prison and things of that nature. So I think that it depends. I did not have a support system. I did on the last time that I got out, I did have some support in regards to going to school, and I just stayed on the track and roughed it out a little bit. But without that support, it's really nothing there for me.
Yeah, and if I can mention, I see there's a question in the chat, and I think it's directed to Mr. Slater. But I can say for myself, keeping with that same question, one of the things that assists me this particular time, and this is, you know, the most prosperous time that I've had as an individual, as a human being, as far as my reentry is concerned, as far as personally, you know, with my family, within my community, and it's that, and it was the participation that I had with Fair Chance Licensing. It was the participation that I had with James's Reentry Campus Program. These things gave me value. You know, people looked at me and really cared about what was going on with Meko as an individual, and that's what helped me with this particular with my transition this particular time. And other times in the past that wasn't there, or I just didn't recognize it for whatever reason.
Justice Long, have you got any questions?
Well, I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity to hear these stories. One of the things that we've been working on in the courts, Chief Justice Sattel, in the aftermath of the George Floyd killing last year, established a committee in the courts to engage in self-reflection, really, and to ask and ask questions of ourselves as judicial officers and as the institution that is responsible for the justice, what it is that we can do to reach out to the public and learn more about what some of the components to the systemic racism in our society are. And so I'm just so grateful to hear the stories of what folks have experienced, so that we can learn more about what the problems are that people face. I guess my question would be, I've heard a lot about the barriers once you're leaving the adult correctional institutions, but I'm curious to know about improvements in the delivery of the justice system, if you have some observations that you'd like to share tonight, because that's one of the things that we're really interested in our Committee on Racial and Ethnic Fairness in the Courts, is hearing stories about how it is that we can improve the system overall.
I have, I know I keep jumping in, I have extensive experience regarding, being in Rhode Island Superior Court. Plenty of times I've advocated for myself. I've wrote some things, and addressed them to the judge and stuff. And, sometimes I think there was kind of lack of empathy. I think it's, in my opinion, it was kind of like a cookie cutter approach. You look at the person's crime, you look at, some of the circumstances surrounding the crime, and then there's punishment without really taking the time to look at the person's background. I know there's pre-sentencing things that should be taking place. I think there was like a lack of connect or lack of empathy for my particular case for me. I don't want to go because it's a long, arduous process, and it's a really long story, and we just don't have the time for it. But I just think a little empathy could go a long way. And also, there's one other thing, and I think this is really particular for this particular event. People who are held in intake, who may have been charged with crimes but not convicted, they are held, some people are held without bail. Come voting time, they're prevented from voting. However, they still have the right to vote. 14 years ago, the state passed the law with Representative Slater's bill. We was able to vote. However, people that's in the intake right now can't vote. So I think another thing that can be done is if we can put a voting machine within the intake during voting time, so individuals can also participate there. I think that would be really a huge change.
Okay. That's certainly something that the League is very, very interested in. We have supported voting rights right straight through. In fact, I think it got mentioned in September about people who were in intake had not been sentenced, had not been necessarily weren't necessarily were charged, but not sentenced, and they were possibly able to vote if they knew exactly how to do it, which would have been by mail, but they weren't at their address either if they were registered. So certainly take that away.
And
yeah,
because Meko was saying in regards to people getting voted and these are another barrier I think that gets in our way when we're released from prison is we encounter mental health issues, and it's not so easy for a male to admit it, and sometimes they go out into society and they express themselves differently. I think PTSD is one of the main mental health issues that people are experiencing when they getting out of prison. Just going to prison, period, point. You encounter PTSD because your freedom is taken away from you. That could be easily for some people uh, adapted to, not for everyone. And then the experiences that you experience while you're in prison. You might see someone get raped, or uh, murdered or something. I'm saying because the environment in prison is really it's really violent for I don't know, compared to society. So I think that should be something that we collectively as a community, developers or what have you, address that, because that is a thing that leads to drug addiction, uh, low self-esteem, a lot of things that the experience alone of being in prison. I'm done.
Anybody else want to add anything to that?
I do actually. When I was leaving prison, um, I had been put on a medication while I was incarcerated, an antidepressant, and they had provided me with, I think it was like 3 or 4 days worth, or even 5 days worth. Now, this is a medication I had been on for maybe a year, or maybe even longer than that of my time incarcerated. So when I got out, I didn't have my health care yet. I didn't have a primary doctor. So I ended up just stopping the medication, which was the worst thing that I could have done. So I went through really bad withdrawals, and I ended up having to go to the emergency room, and it just was, I wasn't given the proper care to leave prison. You know what I mean? Like, it put me in a very bad place mentally, and physically, because your body becomes dependent on medications. And it was just I kind of, it hurt in a sense, because luckily I was able to get care, but not everybody has that privilege. So that's another barrier. It just made me think of when Stanley was going off about the mental health part of it. I
Health
think
is really an issue.
absolutely.
Post.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, with COVID now, everything's kind of, well, I don't even have to go into it, but just with COVID in itself, it's yeah.
Right. Actually, that brings up a really quick question is, with COVID, have you all, you're all on Zoom now. So are you on your own devices, or are you borrowing devices, or how have you managed with COVID, particularly for the with education? You as a welder, you can't do that over Zoom.
No, I'm actually able to go, but I had to miss some time a couple weeks ago. I had to quarantine because my mom and my daughter ended up getting COVID. So I had to quarantine, which really, especially like when I got out of prison, it was right before COVID. I got out on February 16th, and then COVID hit like a month later. So I actually was very blessed, because before I got released from prison, I was on work release. So I actually was working outside of the prison, and my employer actually kept me for once I was released. So I was actually working. So I was in a very good place of employment, per se, of leaving prison. but that doesn't happen like majority of the people getting out, you know? And I just was like, I couldn't imagine me have gotten out at that time and not having employment, because then COVID hit and
Yeah.
I'm looking for work, and you know, just
Right. Oh, yes. I certainly can. Having been unemployed for I don't know how long, for a number of years between jobs, that was a mess.
Well, Liz, I think we've got a couple of questions. I'll put a little reminder to our attendees that if you have some questions you'd like to pose to our panelists, please put them in the Q&A feature. We do have a question submitted from one of our attendees that was kind of sparked by some of the comments that Stanley mentioned earlier in the discussion. And the question is actually, I think, kind of directed towards Representative Slater. Can Representative Slater please speak to the broader social policies that can help support the well-being of former prisoners, and obviously to society more generally? And it had to do with what Stanley was talking about earlier in the discussion about the low wages and the difficulties that formerly incarcerated people experience once they do come out, once they come out into society after being imprisoned.
Yes, absolutely. So I think one of the things we've been working on is you know, a year in and year out basis is increasing the minimum wage, just to bring wages up across the board, but also just providing different training programs that are out there, different like Building Futures has a training program, investing in those, investing in the trades, and making sure that they include people that are re-entering society and getting back in. I've been working on legalization of cannabis for many years, just because I believe it's a better policy. But it's important when we do legalize is to make sure that there's space in that area, that we take care of folks that have been marginalized over the years and communities that have been disproportionately affected by that policy, whether not only with jobs in that industry, but also with the revenue that maybe would generate from that policy, and making sure that loans are available for folks to start up small businesses, or businesses just that for people that aren't even working in the cannabis industry, just small businesses they might be starting that have nothing to do with cannabis, but provide sort of a fund so that they can get the startup and do that and reach their goals. Also, you know, continually to look at our laws around expungement. I think, like I was talking about the ban the box legislation earlier, that's a good piece of legislation to help people get a foot in the door. But ultimately, in order to help people with housing and many other things, I think we need to expand, especially nonviolent crimes and felonies that are able to be expunged. And so those would be my answers to that question.
Could I ask a question as well?
Yes.
Thanks, Representative Slater. Because I was going to ask particularly about the marijuana legislation, and I know to all the viewers who are listening, whether you believe in the legalization of marijuana or not, if the state does in fact legalize marijuana, there's going to be, you know, a windfall of, you know, revenue that's going to be generated. And like Representative Slater said, I think it's really important that everyone who's within the sound of my voice understands, you know, the social equity piece regarding that. And Representative Slater talked about that. I mean, how, you know, there's many different aspects to that particular bill. And I just want to know, like, how far are we going regarding that? Like, how can we actually, like, what can we do to continue to support that particular piece of legislation? And I've seen some bills, maybe we can make them better. What can we do to assist you and assist that particular issue?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Just forums like this are helpful also, and your participation, reaching out to your own representative and myself. I'll be happy to include you in any discussions and so that we can do that further. You can definitely reach out to me after this, and I'll be happy to include you in that discussion.
Thank you.
That brings up another thing. I'd like to ask you all what you would like this audience to take away from this, and make it really short, like a sentence or two, because we're close to running out of time.
So what I would like the audience to take from this is that, we may have criminal records, but those are things that we've done. They're not who we are. And, we're individuals who are looking to get back into society and definitely give back. And the more that we have the ability and the resources and the opportunities to participate, we're more than willing to participate and pull our own weight. We're part of the society. So, please just understand that we are human beings also. Have empathy for us.
Okay, Shannon? Yes? Stanley?
Yes, I would say you can do the impossible. Just look at me. I should have my associates. Me?
Yes, and is there some way that, congratulations, and is there, Meko mentioned empathy, but is there some, I think you can say, write our representatives about Representative Slater's legislation with an eye to helping people who are previously incarcerated. Would that be something that you would think would be useful? No answer.
I think so.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Me also.
Yeah. So how about you, Shannon? Are you muted?
Yeah, am I muted?
No, you're not
Oh.
now.
Okay. I think just having compassion, and understanding that, I think Meko said it like
Okay.
clear.
That's fine.
Great wording.
Okay. Justice Long, do you have any thoughts that people, the audience, should be looking at particularly?
I'm just so grateful for everyone's participation in this tonight. I do think we're at a point in our history and in our society where we need to be engaging in our institutions and in our civic as citizens. And so I'm grateful to all of the people who've tuned in tonight, and I'm incredibly grateful to Meko, Shannon, and Stanley, and of course to James always for having the courage and the strength to speak up tonight. And I thank the League of Women Voters, and I thank the Lippitt House for inviting me to listen to their stories.
Excellent. James, I know you have to leave almost immediately. Do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I just echo everybody's sentiments. Thank you for having us, and thank you for highlighting this issue. Scott, sorry, I got to run. Everybody, thank you for doing this and for being a part. God bless.
Thanks, James.
Well, congratulations to all of you for being so willing to participate and to help us understand some of the issues that are involved, and maybe help everybody to learn a little bit more about this and to develop two sides to the story and develop some trust in what's happening with you all. Okay. Carrie?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Slater, did you want to say something as we close this evening's program out?
Absolutely. Yes, Carrie, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Lippitt House. This is great. I appreciate you inviting me to attend, and especially all the students that were here from the formerly incarcerated campus. Thank you for all your advocacy and for your work. And Justice Long, thank you for all you do, and for having you on the court, I think is wonderful. And I'm so happy that you're there, bringing a voice that'll represent many marginalized folks. So thank you.
Yes.
Well, thank you all for not only to the attendees for joining us this evening and taking of your time to learn more about this issue, but also for all our participants for sharing their stories and sharing their expertise with all of us this evening. This is a topic that I feel that we all want to learn more about. And I think as we talked about when we were talking about our these community conversations that we organize, that our civil society doesn't really work unless we all participate. And education programs like the Reentry Campus Program organizes are very important to make our society truly inclusive. So thank you all for joining us. And if you haven't already, I hope you check out the other programs that Lippitt House Museum organizes. Civic engagement is a very important part of what we do. And so please check out our other programs. So thank you all and see you soon. And spring is on the way. So stay strong and stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Great
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure.